All right, we are live. Rethinking the Dollar RTD Live Talk. I'm excited to have with me two gentlemen from the Kennedy Financial News Channel here to share their thoughts on what's happening around the world, as well as the whole crypto market and the precious metals market, and looking forward to covering a lot of topics with you guys. And so let's start by just basically introducing yourself. You know, Phil, you joined me prior on a show, and I was also featuring your show as well. But for those that may not know, share with us a little bit about who you guys are, and just give us some information as to who the Kennedy brothers are.
Sure. So John and I are brothers. I'm the older brother, Phil. John's a younger brother by 7 years, and I think that's probably why we've always gotten along so well. And really, in about 2015, John and I would have weekly phone conversations, and John said, "Hey, you know, we should probably start a podcast." And I'm like, "Yeah, you know, I think a lot of people would really benefit from some of the discussions we have. We're both accountants, so we think like accountants. We kind of think about things through that lens. Things should be honest in both fact and appearance." And so that's really kind of what spawned our show, right, John?
Yeah, we've both gone through the typical experiences of, you know, people getting their finances in order and getting it straight, and so we've had the opportunity to learn how to do things right and how to do things the wrong way too. So and it's also fun to connect these bigger concepts to everyday life, because a lot of times you'll hear top economists talk about some things, and you don't really know how to apply that to your life, but we try to tackle those topics too.
Right, very true. And so that's one of my approaches here with RTD, is the fact that I want to speak with anyone, because everyone has an opinion. Everyone has thoughts and feelings about how, you know, this world works. And so if I can get a viewpoint from any and everybody and put it all together, then it gives me a better position to be able to make sound decisions, as opposed to just solely looking for and searching for guys that are mainstream gentlemen. So I appreciate you guys joining me. So let's get into some questions. We got a couple people joining us, and as always, if you would like, I have the number above my head. If you have a question at any point during our conversation where you want to, you know, call in and share or get an answer from these, you know, financial experts here. So we love to take your questions and whatnot. Is also chime into the chat as well with some questions. Love to get those answered. And so let's start off with we're almost the month's almost done in 2018. The month of January is almost done. Give me some ideas as to what you guys are either excited about, concerned about. What are you keeping your eyes on? What are some things that you are, you know, looking at most these days?
John, do you want to tackle that one first, or should I take it?
You can take it.
Okay.
I'll follow up.
So I think what I'm most excited about is something that, frankly, we've been talking about for a while now, which is the fact that we never really solved the problems that we all witnessed through the 2008 financial crisis. And we remember those stories and how bad they were, because now movies have come out about them, right? The Big Short came out, and everyone remembers just how bad the housing crisis was. And the Fed came in order to save the day, lowering interest rates down to all-time lows. And now here it is. It's been, what, 7, 8, 9 years later, and we've all forgotten just how bad things really were. And we seem to think that the Fed really did save the day and all those problems have been fixed. But the fact is, John and I are accountants, and we know intuitively that problems just don't go away on their own. You can fudge financial statements all you want, but the fact is, all of those bad investments are still sitting somewhere, even if we're not reporting them on our balance sheet. So when you see the stock market go up 1,000 points in a week, when you see the dollar drop 1% in a day, when you see the 10-year note surging past levels that it's been over the last year, I think really, you know, you hear a lot of experts talk about it on your show, Mike, on Rethinking the Dollar. I think a lot of their predictions that some of us, frankly, were far too soon on are going to now start to come to fruition as we enter Donald Trump's second year of his presidency. So I won't say that I'm excited about that, but it's going to be interesting to see things play out and see how they unravel and see who gets blamed for this. What do you think, John?
I don't know if I can hear Mike. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of these situations where you are in a position where there's a lot of folks who said, "Ha, see, I told you." It's not. There's nothing wrong with the economy. The Fed saved us, and in reality, you look at what's occurred, and you have to see that nothing really did change, like you said, and a lot of malinvestment was created. I think, especially in particular, a lot of investment was created in real estate. It was just shifted. It was just shifted to different sectors, like rental income real estate and residential commercial leasing. So I think there's a lot to be to still hit down the road, and it's going to.
I do agree. And so one thing, that has not changed is the fact that everything's been shoved under the rug or kicked down as they kick the can down the road. But one thing that has developed that has altered and gave a lot of people hope is the whole cryptocurrency thing. Prior to the last Great Recession, there was no alternative other than precious metals, which everyone knows is heavily manipulated. But now a lot of people are excited. We have, I made a video earlier today about how excited people are, to where if you watch your favorite YouTube video, there's an ad right before talking about how to get involved, how to invest, how to watch out this, how to make money. And so my question that I want to ask you guys is, do you think that this recent crave in this technology is something that will be beneficial for us in the long term, or will it be something that we'll only be able to enjoy in a short term? Since government haven't really stepped in, there's no real official rules as to how they're going to regulate this. So share with you your thoughts on this development of this technology.
Well, I think from an accountant's standpoint, cryptocurrency and Bitcoin are one of the most evolutionary financial tools that we've seen in some time. I mean, not since the advent of dual entry bookkeeping have we seen something really this exciting. And it's all because of the internet and computers. It was never possible before. So, on the one hand, sure, there's going to be a lot of fraud involved. There are going to be the BitConnects out there defrauding people. But that doesn't really take away from the space as a whole. And I think that, if you don't know, if you haven't been educating yourself on Bitcoin, you should learn, because I frankly do not think cryptocurrency is going to go away. This is here to stay. And people may be looking at it as, well, this is like a financial asset. This is just like the .com bubble or the housing bubble. Really, I think if you want to compare cryptocurrency to something more accurate, it would be more like Netflix adoption. How many subscribers were added to Netflix and how many gave up their Blockbuster video card, right? That's really more akin to what's going on. And when I see things like your video, Mike, where you're talking about, hey, this guy's trying to sell his Bentley on Craigslist for Bitcoin, this is pretty exciting. Yeah. And on the one hand, you can say to yourself, well, shoot, what if that guy sold his Bentley when Bitcoin hit 20,000 and then he watched his sudden sale plummet and get cut by half? Well, yeah, that would hurt. But on the other hand, if he doesn't need to turn around and spend that money right away on diapers and medicine and putting a roof over his head, then he isn't necessarily taking that big a risk. And I think the reason we're seeing more people willing to do that is because of something you have talked about a lot on Rethinking the Dollar, Mike, Gresham's Law. And Gresham's Law is a law for a reason, because it's not Gresham's theory. It works every time. Right. I think that, although Bitcoin has a lot of problems, compared to the fiat currencies of the world, it has far more benefits. So if you haven't educated yourself on Bitcoin, I highly recommend you do. Find resources like Cryptoversity, go watch a documentary like Magic Money. And it's never been easier to educate yourself on these things. Open a Coinbase account. And like I told John, there's a story when Dr. Dre went to visit Steve Jobs to learn about the Apple iPod. And he had it in his hands for the first time. And Steve Jobs was explaining to him, hey, this is how you download your song. And look, you don't have to download the whole album. You can download just one song at a time. And Dr. Dre looked at him and said, hey, man, this is what we've been waiting for. When you get your first Bitcoin wallet and you send money from yourself to someone overseas and they receive it and they get it like 10 minutes, an hour later, you recognize it immediately. You recognize just how evolutionary this tool is going to be.
All right, I do agree. John, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think in terms of, you mentioned the long term versus short term. Short term, I think it's kind of scary, but because it goes up and down, and you don't know what to expect. But long term, yeah, I think there's no reason to not be educating yourself and be prodding this market to see where you want to be, where you want to end up, because you're going to need to know how to use it, and it's going to be a long term viable option, I believe.
Right. And one of my questions that I've been thinking about lately is the fact that right before 2017 ended, there was a great market hike, and it was like almost 800 billion dollars, and then everyone got excited. I'm not sure what that was about, but yet we had the CME future, all the futures coming about, and all this financial institution hype. It was getting ready for January 1st, and so here we are in January, had another little spike, and then it dropped. So share with me your thoughts on how it was an 800 billion market cap, and now it's around 500-600. But yet a lot of people are hodling, as you mentioned the other day in your video, the idea of just holding on for dear life and weathering the storm. Share with me your thoughts on this whole idea of the market cap. When it hits 1 trillion, will it just go through the roof, or will we have continuous pump and dump type of activity from this point on out? What do you think?
Well, I like to tell a lot of analogies. You'll see that as we do our interview. All of this reminds me of a video I saw. It was back in 2012. There was a story that came out in Florida. People were taking bath salts, and they were consuming bath salts, and they were doing crazy things like as a result of consuming this thing that you shouldn't. And so there was a real scare in the community that people were turning into zombies, right? So this one guy thought it'd be a fun prank to go around to the local community, scare people on park benches and on playgrounds and on basketball courts and things like that. And it worked. He was dressed up like a zombie, and he'd come in like Jamie Dimon and smash the price of Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is a fraud. And so, gosh, this is the biggest banker, and he works for JP Morgan, so he must be right. And we've just seen this time and time again, China cracking down. But just like that video with the zombies, eventually this guy came to one basketball court, and there was this big guy, 6'6", 250 pounds. And he just looked at him, crossed his arms. And I got this video on our YouTube channel. You can check it out. And his buddies, they're all leaping over the fence, but they turn around moments later and they're realizing, hey, he's not scared, so why should be? And they all come racing after him. And that's the last thing you see is this guy's grabbing this fake zombie by the shirt. That's what's going on in the cryptocurrency markets. You hear the term fear, uncertainty, and doubt, FUD for short. It happens time and time again. Max Kaiser talks about it on his show. When Bitcoin fell from $14 down to $7, he was getting hate mail. Wouldn't most of us, everyone watching Rethinking the Dollar now, wouldn't we love to go back in time and load up on as much Bitcoin as we could possibly find? I really think that there will come a day when we tell our grandkids, hey, I was able to get my hands on a $10,000 Bitcoin, and awe will come over their faces because it'll be who knows what by then, but much higher.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing how, when Bitcoin and all the other altcoins weren't really mainstream news, you would try to tell someone or recommend or say, hey, take a look at this. And people, didn't have time. But now once it hit the mainstream news, everyone has time now and want to ask you questions and whatnot. So it's funny how people are very selective with the information they want to receive according to their mood and timing. So that's interesting. But John, you have anything you want to share about that as well?
Yeah, there's another good one where the guy's trying to scare the girl. He's dressed up like a clown, and then he pops out of the trash can and she punches him in the face, instead of doing what she should. So it's like, yeah, it's perfect. And it's like, well, people are going to respond different ways, and you can't exactly predict how they're going to do it. But I think that's a good example also of Phil's zombie. So,
and can I add, Mike, you can use that to your advantage. When Facebook is excited and exuberant, that's a good indicator that it's time to sell and back off a little bit. I mean, I get questions all the time when Litecoin was pumping over $200 towards 300 and 400. The questions started rolling in. Hey, how do I open a Coinbase account? How do I get my hands on Litecoin? That's a clue. And if you're on Facebook, and especially if you're in any of these crypto groups, be very careful. I think a lot of these groups are pump and dump scams. They're encouraging people to go out and buy altcoins that really have no merit other than to enrich the people that are pumping them and make people who are buying them poor in the process. So, a couple rules I have: don't buy anything that has less than like $100 million market cap. You can go to coinmarketcap.com and look that up. Buy something that's a coin and not a token. You can also select that on CoinMarketCap. And if you see these crypto groups saying, hey, this is going to be the next thing on Coinbase, I can promise you, don't just run away. I think it's a fraud. I think it's a scam.
All right. And then that leads right into the whole ICO, topic I want to, cover, because literally, I want to say the last 2 or so days or so, I've received or heard about various ICOs that's coming that's now linking metals to some form of a coin or whatnot. And so, having a show, most people reach out to try to encourage me to look into it or to share information about it. And so very leery of it, because I imagine that once you start dipping precious metals and the blockchain together, that's when there's going to be some real regulation and some real government intervention, because I don't think they want those two to collide just yet, especially if they're not in control of it themselves. So what are your thoughts on these ICOs? I mean, are some of these things going to be legit, or is this something to be wary of because there's going to be a lot of pump and dumps, as you mentioned? So how do you measure the ICO aspect of things?
Well, for me personally, I think this is an area that might be more similar to the dot-com bubble, because an ICO, an initial coin offering, is a very similar process to an IPO, an initial public offering. So this may be an area where you see coins go from $100 one day down to zero the next. And I'd be very leery of the people I deal with. I talk to a lot of guys in this community as a result of the contacts we've made, just like you, Mike. I'm sure you've made a ton of contacts, and now you're a face of this financial movement, and people want to get in touch with you. And we have to be very careful of that, because our reputations are on the line. So I would treat those as probably the most speculative asset out there. And there's a smart guy out there, his name's Chris Dunn, who he trades cryptos for a living, and he's got a YouTube channel. And one of his points of advice were 90% of all cryptocurrencies will eventually go to zero, so trade accordingly.
Good point. Yeah, and then also the you mentioned the gold bullion aspect of it, tying the two together, and that does seem difficult. It seems like a difficult thing to try to be able to do, and because most of the allure for both of these, the allure is different for both of these options. Your cryptos or your gold. Gold's physical. I can put it in a safe. Nobody can steal it, by hacking, my password or what have you. But and then on the other hand, cryptos can't, the government can't just come in and confiscate that, or as long as you have good security. So yeah, I would wonder how that would work, and a lot of the kinks would need to be worked out. A lot of the claims I'm suspicious of as it relates to those crypto bullion combo items.
Yeah. And so I'm more so like, if you have bullion actually backing them up or linked to them or associated via name, my only thing will be just, trusting that when it's time to get out, that you will be actually able to exchange your coins for the metals in a timely fashion. Because one thing that really concerns me is the fact that there's minimum places that you can actually redeem or exchange these tokens. So you got Coinbase, you got GDAX, you got Kraken, you got all the major exchanges. But yet, what if there's some type of event where everyone tries to get out and all 4 or 5 of those companies freeze up, then you're stuck in those tokens, then you'll be stuck trying to get your gold and whatnot. So that's one thing I'm very leery of myself. So I want to go ahead.
I have somewhat of a nuanced idea on this. I was kind of debating a friend of mine on another channel in his group today and yesterday. And by the way, we're living in a very unique time where it's difficult to share your opinions on a lot of this stuff, because people seem to be playing for one team or another. And I had a guest on my show, Keith Smith, bright guy, a Bitcoin millionaire. He's retired at the age of 34, formerly a roofer, but had a computer science degree and understood this stuff. And he said, look, gold and Bitcoin are complementary. You don't have to just pick one team. And as I've studied this, I've followed guys like Andreas Antonopoulos and Trace Mayer and all the brightest minds in the Bitcoin arena. What I'm discovering is with Bitcoin, you can buy anything, including gold and silver. So I don't see why anybody would be opposed to it. It really is an evolutionary technology. And we're not living in a world where there's only Mt. Gox anymore. I know there's only, you mentioned GDAX and Bittrex and Kraken. There's overseas exchanges. Eventually, we're going to get decentralized exchanges coming on. So the idea of necessarily having a cryptocurrency that's backed by something, I think it's unnecessary. I think it's redundant. And I really think it's kind of a distraction, because you can buy a Bentley, you can go to Gold Money and buy gold, you can go on Expedia and buy a trip for your wife and your family, you can go on Overstock and buy a living room set. So this is just my take. And I know, a lot of your listeners are probably thinking to themselves, gosh, I'm even more confused now. But that's why you need to go out and educate yourself, find the brightest minds that are out there, and information on cryptocurrency has never been easier to get.
Right. And when I was referring to, trying to exit, I was more so referring to exit back into fiat currency, if that was something that you wanted to do. But yet the idea of exchanging directly for metals or goods and services directly was going to be the main thing coming with this smart contract implementation. And so one of the things I want to hint at, I kind of lost my thought there for a second. John, did you have anything you want to share? I had a thought there, but I lost it.
No, yeah. Phil definitely hits it on the head as far as just the idea that you can, the idea of a cryptocurrency is you can buy the things that you want, and ideally it's going up in value as opposed to the dollar, which is falling apart, as we know. So that would be the direction I would go with it. It's just to say, we don't necessarily need to confuse what we want to do with bullion or with cryptos.
Right. So right when you said dollar, that's when it clicked. And so my thought was, since, not to confuse people who may not be familiar with it, but any alternative outside of fiat currency provides an option. So whether it's blockchain-based cryptocurrency of some form or precious metals, at the end of the day, we all would agree here that fiat currency, as well as the Federal Reserve note, is coming down towards its last days as far as being a trusted, reliable global currency. Now, we may, have it in our own country, but depending upon what it can purchase. But everyone can agree that because of inflation and the way that's manipulated and dominated by the powers that be, it won't be around for much longer. So feel confident that the fiat currency will probably return to its intrinsic value, which is zero. And, the least of the cryptocurrencies might still have a penny's worth of value if you can get it to someone via however you get it to them. So, and then, I lost my other thought, but yeah. And so anyway.
Well, no, you're triggering a memory I had, Mike. There's a guy out there, a smart guy, Louis Camerasano. He's on smallgold.com. And he posted something on Twitter. They found these coins off the coast of South Carolina, gold coins from the 1800s. And I joked with him. I said, hey, did the divers find any continentals down there too? Like, how silly does that sound, right? Like, we all know the expression ain't worth nothing but a continental. And one day, maybe our great grandkids will say ain't worth nothing but a Federal Reserve note or something like that. It will go to its intrinsic value. We think it's real because it's all we've ever known. We've had the luxury of living in the country that held the world's reserve currency, the dollar, the petrodollar. So we think this is normal. But if you talk to friends who've lived overseas, they know totally differently. I have a good friend from Venezuela who understands this intuitively. I mean, he was talking about this to me in 1994 when he lived with us. And of course, it was a foreign concept to myself. But I know that's how you arrived at all of this too, Mike, as a result of your overseas travel. Right. You understand it. You begin to understand it when you exchange with other currencies and you talk to the people and you see what's happened to them. And we are not able to escape the laws of economics. They apply to the United States too. So
very true.
The dollar will be worth a continental one day.
Right. So before we leave tonight, we should come up with a slogan and then create some content off of it to give people a different perspective of what the dollar will be one day. But I feel very bad because I've been neglecting questions in a chat session.
Oh.
So let me go ahead and answer a question or ask a question from Construct. It says, question, is it even possible to make cryptos illegal? Can it be enforced? Anybody want to chime in on that one?
Yeah, I think it's it's impossible for the government to ban drugs, for instance. They can't get the drugs out of the prisons. So, if they can't get it out of there, then it's unlikely they'll be able to effectively ban all drugs. So in the same way, cryptocurrencies, if people are willing, how could they possibly stop it? Are they going to search through everybody's computer and find the apps and the coin, the wallets? And I think it'd be very difficult to enforce and almost impossible.
Speaking of which, I'm not sure if you guys, I was watching or listening to someone in an alternative space the other day, and they mentioned how now it's possible for, I guess, TSA now to either demand or kind of grab your phone and ask for your password and expect you to give it to them to comb through your personal items. So that might be something that has been implemented to see what's in your phone or your laptop or computer. So I believe it's coming. And then another thought is, someone just shared with me recently that I haven't checked into it to verify it, but even just traveling within our own country now, we need to have some type of a certified license or something of that nature. So I'm not sure if you guys heard about that, but those are all things I think they're going to implement to try to, say it's for our protection, but then at the end of the day, it's also to pry into our, our privacy and things of that nature. So, that's one way of monitoring, at least, because they definitely want to keep track of who's becoming millionaires under the table, that they're not showing it outright the way some people are. So interesting. So another question, if anyone don't have any comment on that one question.
But yeah, I got one. We just celebrated a man who once said one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. What business is it of theirs to go through my phone, without a warrant? We are a nation of laws, right? And if we go down that road, how's that any different than saying, hey, I need to know who's up in your attic right now. We need to come search because, we're supposed to send them someplace. I have a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws, and we all do. So without that, if we go that route, this isn't going to be a very good place to live. And fortunately for us, it'll be easier than ever to grab your keep key, your Ledger Nano S, your hardware wallet, and get on a private jet through Smart Jets or whatever this app is I just saw the other day. I keep seeing it on Facebook. I'm looking forward to the day, Mike, that I actually get to fly on a private jet. Yeah, Jet Smarter. Get on a private jet, get on a yacht, and go someplace where they still have freedom.
Yeah, that sounds good. I do agree. Let me see another question here. I just looked at it. Says, let me see, says this something. How can you link gold to crypto when the precious metals is manipulated to the downside? The ETF GLD gold does this already. So in reference to our earlier conversation about linking gold and whatnot, do you think that's something that might end up sticking? So gold money is not an actual token or coin, but their platform is still digital. You have to go through their app and their platform in a digitized form.
Right.
And so can you see, for example, gold money spinning off an ICO token coin that would be attached? Because I believe it's coming if it isn't already in the make. So do you think that something might stick and be accepted and welcomed?
Well, I think the beauty of Bitcoin is that it really is totally decentralized. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem when you look at gold money or Ripple or any of the other hundreds of new cryptocurrencies that have come out. They are not decentralized. So I think it's going to be a learning process for people to understand the difference. The reason we've relied on gold and silver for so many thousand years is because we didn't have anything better. Right. We could rely on the fact that, one of my favorite shows is Gold Rush on the Discovery Channel. You look at what these guys have to do to get gold out of the ground. That has what's happened over the millennia. So that was your best safeguard, is that, hey, you need a lot of heavy equipment to find this stuff. And as time marched on, it got harder and harder to find it. And fortunately, now with Bitcoin, we have that same thing replicated digitally. So there'll be a lot of games. Just like my zombie analogy, people will play a lot of games to smash the price of Bitcoin. And I think what we can look forward to, though, is they'll be minor in comparison to the massive manipulation, suppression, and fraud that has taken place by the COMEX and PPT with phony paper contracts to smash the price of gold and silver.
Right, fair enough. Now, as always, we're a couple minutes to the conversation, and if anyone out there has a question that they would like to ask directly by calling in, I would love to hear someone's voice. I'm sure you guys would too as well. Get a call or whatnot with the question on these type of subject matters. But I want to kind of transition to the next segment of topic of conversation, rather, and it has to do with debt and the fact that we are globally, I think it's $280 trillion, and all that being really, issued fiat currency by the different governments and the, commercial banking through fractional reserve lending and whatnot. So all that's expected to be paid back. And we all know that it cannot be paid back. And so, we're leading the way as a country with 21 trillion on book and 70, 80 off book. And so give me your thoughts on this debt. Like, can we continue to travel the same pathway we're on now with the deficit spending just continue to blow up, especially with this tax stuff going on? Give me your thoughts on next 2, 3, 5 years, borrowing any type of, geopolitical war or anything like that. When does this party come to an end, if it does?
Yeah, well, I'll take that one. I'll just start out by saying I don't think we're ever paying that back. I think it's only going to go up, and I think in the future, maybe 50 to 100 years from now, I don't know, in that time range, eventually our debtors are going to get tired of not getting paid back, and we won't be able to pay them back. We're going to have to rely on all these entitlements, and we're going to continue to expect those as a country, and we're going to continue to expect all this, spending on various military, et cetera. So, we're going to have to, we're destined for failure, unfortunately. And it's going to happen. Sadly, there's no escape. That's the only thing, is you just say, okay, well, I'm going to have to take my family and leave, because I don't want to be on the hook for this, like, whatever it ends up being, like 50 trillion, 100 trillion, or whatever made up number that they come up with.
Yeah, that's scary, man. Now, my next thing is the fact that there's so much debt, and we're involved in that majorly. Won't pay it back, and so it's basically a very fragile economy that we're operating on, because if any domino falls from anything, and derivatives, all types of things that I don't even know about, anything can go wrong at any moment. Now, the Federal Reserve is talking about how to prepare for the next recession. Janet Yellen said we're not going to have one in our lifetime. I think she said her lifetime. So either she's not planning on living much longer, or she knows something we don't know. So, in preparation for a recession, because we are long overdue. Some people say we are in one. Some people think we're not. So what do you guys think? Will the dominoes fall before or after recession? And then what are some possible scenarios of how the Fed will respond?
Well, I think one of the best examples is Bernie Madoff. I mean, he was able to keep his Ponzi scheme going for, they say, decades. And then Harry Markopolos comes out in 2000 and writes to the SEC and says, hey, look, this guy's running a Ponzi scheme. And they ignore him. And 8 more years goes by till Bernie himself finally admits to his sons, hey, I've been running a Ponzi scheme. And it was only as a result of the 2008 financial crisis that he was not able to keep all the balls in the air. So he was just one guy. I mean, you look at how one guy pulled that off for so long, and it's pretty incredible. And we sit here with our rational, logical minds as accountants and think, well, this should come tumbling down any day. I wrote my book, Financial Judo, in 2015 because I thought we had maybe a year. But I think the fact is none of us, even the biggest doomsdayer out there, really realizes just how big this bubble is, just how big it will get, and just how bad it will be when it finally collapses.
Yeah, it's fun to be, one of these people that says, "Oh, no, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with the economy. Everything's going to be okay." But unfortunately, yeah, Phil points out, you look at this logically, and you just have to admit that there's no way that people can continue to do this. But if enough people believe in something, I think that can hold it off for a while. And if enough people believe that Madoff didn't do anything wrong, then it might have been able to keep it from happening. But once we realize that, once people realize, okay, here's the extent of the damage that he's done, then it was understood, and it all came tumbling down. And that's unfortunately what's going to be the case here. It's just a matter of time. And if more people listen to us, if we had the whole country tuned in, then it would come tumbling down right now. So it's just a matter of reaching people's minds.
All right, so gentlemen, I believe we have a call, and so
great.
Caller, are you there? Hello? Hello? Caller, are you there?
Maybe I scared him with all that talk of private jets and yachts and stuff.
Yeah, I just got a new phone, so I'm having some issues with it. So I'll probably say it's my fault, but
okay.
you call back, I'll try to get it right. But
I got a thought I could share while we're trying to get the caller, if you want me to try, Mike.
Go ahead, please do. Share that thought.
So, you know, we look at through everything in terms of numbers. You know, numbers is the one thing that doesn't lie. And if you go to usdebtclock.org, you can see those numbers chugging along. And Mike, you and I would probably agree that a lot of these numbers are conservative numbers. You mentioned Lawrence Kotlikov's 220 some trillion national debt, and this one says, well, it's only 20 trillion. So let's just go with that. So if we use a $20 trillion national debt, that's still $63,000 per citizen. I have 4 people in my family, so that's $250,000. Oh, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
No, you go ahead. So Phil, I got it going.
Oh, okay.
I apologize. So caller, what's your name and where you calling from?
My name is Jeremy, and I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Jeremy from Albuquerque, New Mexico. What's your question or your thoughts you might want to share with us right now?
I've been watching a lot of your videos. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I'm working with the U.S. is their own cryptocurrency. I understand that Ripple is something that is being developed to be a cryptocurrency, perhaps that could be for the U.S. And if indeed we do get a cryptocurrency for the U.S., how do you think the masses will respond to that? Do you think they'll adopt it, or for the people that don't truly know, then they would not know the reason to not adopt it?
Okay, fair enough. So I think your first part was about Ripple being a banker's coin, and then if there was a coin implemented by the government, will people accept it and warm up to the idea? Is that kind of it?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, gentlemen, Phil, John, anybody want to answer that one?
Yeah, I mean, I really think as far as just people warming up to the coin, and if it was a government coin and it had that seal of approval, you know, that full faith and credit, the United States government, I would think, you know, that would just defeat the purpose for a lot of people. Really, it's because they don't want that you know, full faith and credit. They want independence, and that's what they were originally promised, really. And unfortunately, the government failed to deliver on it. So, you know, fool me once, but I guess that would be my take.
Yeah, I have a similar take too on that. You know, when you run out to any store to buy something, whether it be a phone, this really works well with technology. You know, would you want to buy an iPhone made by Janet Yellen, or would you prefer to buy one from Steve Jobs? I think intuitively we all know the free market does a much better job of making things. It's more trustworthy because free market capitalism punishes losers and endorses winners. So, you know, why would I buy anything? You know, I made a joke of Russia when they wanted to come out with the ruble coin, and I had a picture of Putin riding a grizzly bear saying, you know, why would you want Bitcoin when you could have the ruble coin? And the fact is, we don't need either of those. We have Bitcoin. And I don't know if, you know, I got a photo here, a little meme that I made of Ben Bernanke at a Ripple conference. And the speaker is saying, you know, Mr. Bernanke, you know, how are we going to get people to buy it? And he's like, oh, it's easy. We'll just call it a cryptocurrency. You know, this is, as I mentioned earlier, not a cryptocurrency. I think it's a scam. You know, for one day, the CEO of Ripple was worth more than Mark Zuckerberg. That's not supposed to happen. So stick with the ones that are decentralized. Look at Zcash and Litecoin, Monero, and Bitcoin, and you'll be all right.
Fair enough. Caller, do you have another question you want to ask? One more question, and I appreciate that.
No problem.
As much I read a lot relative to the the Great Reset, and more often than not, there's a statement that it'll be the outcome. And I'm wondering if that everyone that owns dollars and doesn't own either silver, gold, or cryptocurrencies, that they're just gonna, all their wealth is gonna go to that, versus someone that had cryptocurrencies and maybe just natural assets, then and gold and silver. Is that why there'll be a transfer flux?
Good question. That was a very good question. John, Phil, anybody want to take that one?
I wasn't sure I caught the end of it.
Yeah, I didn't catch the end
Phil.
of it. Yeah.
All right, so Carter, can you repeat that again? Because I got it as well, but I figured I'd let you repeat it again.
I keep on hearing that the greatest wealth transfer in history will happen when the reset happens.
Mm-hmm.
Is that due to people that invest now in gold, silver, and cryptocurrencies, and when the dollar fails, they will be more wealthier than the person that just has dollars?
Fair enough. Fair enough. Gentlemen, you guys hear that one?
Yeah, I can take this one, John, or unless you have an idea at the tip of your tongue.
No.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So Mike Maloney's a guy I respect a lot.
Thanks for calling.
No one can take away from the fact that he has produced some of the best financial media out there over recent years. And one of the things that he says is that every time we get a new financial system, a new monetary system, that an unseen accounting is performed, and that's called a wealth transfer. And it's happened hundreds of times, thousands of times over human history, and it's going to happen again. I'm of the opinion that it's happening already, because there is fraud and manipulation against gold and silver. Just like, a little boy squeezing on a balloon, that air is compressed to a different part of that balloon, and that's what we're seeing. It's been compressed to the cryptocurrency markets, and the cryptocurrency markets are picking up where gold and silver should have picked up, but they were manipulated and suppressed fraudulently.
Right. I'm also of the same mind, of which the transfer has been a gradual transfer since the inception of the Federal Reserve Bank, with the concept of inflation target in and of itself. The fact that if you look at the consumer dollar, the purchasing power, that right there lets you know that the greatest hijacking of in human history has been taking place with the implementation of a centrally controlled currency from a private institution. So, now it's their model of injecting debt and siphoning all of the material wealth, such as the fact they own all the mortgage-backed securities. They are not purchasing stocks and God knows what else they're purchasing. They're accumulating all the real tangible stuff, leaving us with the paper debts. So the heist has already happened. Now it's just a matter of the fact that they're running out of people to loan money to. And so then they're going to have a problem with, all of this continuation of debt. And when that ends, that's when we're going to really find out that all those instruments that's not backed by anything but their, promise and their printing press will be, come to nothing, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, we it's tax time, and you always see, okay, well, TurboTax, I need to start doing my taxes right now. But that's only one of the ways that the government takes your wealth. One of the most effective ways is inflation, and it's the unseen killer, really, that people forget about. And so it's so important that people remember this is how we're really being hurt the most by the Fed.
Yeah. Now, so let's talk about that was more so a little bit about our government's issue with needing to borrow too much, but yet it's trickled down to the everyday household. And so we've reached all-time highs, and it kind of plays into the idea that we're tapped out. So we got automobiles, credit cards, student loans, mortgage. I mean, if a house price, you name it, all that stuff is coming to the surface now, and it's not going away. And so give me your thoughts on how, this consumer concept of debt is really hurting everyone in general, and how much longer will this be able to last?
Well, that's one of the things that I mentioned early in this interview that John and I would talk about. I came to my marriage with student loan debt, credit card debt, auto loan debt, and that really is the worst thing for a young man getting started out with his brand new wife. How do you put a roof over your head? How do you save for kids that you might have one day? And really, that's why we started Kennedy Financial. We wanted to do pro bono financial counseling through podcasts and our YouTube channel, and answer people's questions over email, because we know that they're dealing with the same stuff that we dealt with. So how did we tackle it, right? Did you use Dave Ramsey's snowball? Well, how did that work out? What method did you use to get out of debt, stay out of debt, and build wealth so that you can eventually retire with dignity, like Dave Ramsey says? I mean, that's really what we all want. But unfortunately, a lot of people have been sold a bill of goods. The student loans are the worst things going. Anybody who has gotten into six figures in student loan debt for a degree that isn't going to get you a better job than you had when you were in high school, then you were essentially defrauded. So really, that's kind of our mission, John and I, is to try to spread the word as much as we can, get to people before they make that mistake. Unfortunately, after they made that mistake, when a father calls and says, hey, I co-signed for my kid's loan, and now, he isn't working and he's estranged from us, and now Sally Mae is calling me to pay for it. What do I do? Unfortunately, it's too late. Maybe you can negotiate some kind of hardship plan, but the real problem is that you already forked over tens of thousands of dollars to a university for a degree of dubious value. So these are the kinds of things we're always talking about, and no question is too big or small. And we'll talk about how people can feed us their questions if they'd like. But John, I know that's really how we started talking about student loans and things like that.
Yeah, we both have experience with this, and we when we got out of college, I didn't understand everything about. Oh yeah, I thought you could get a lot of wealth through just having a credit card, and it turns out that's not true. But it's like and another aspect of it, I think that Phil alluded to there, is just that people understand personal finance intuitively, and when you tell them don't do that, don't co-sign your kid's loan, or don't get crazy debt and for college or whatever, and don't get into credit card debt. They understand that, and it's when you apply those concepts to the government and you treat the government similarly that people are like, oh, you mean the government can't do that either, and it can't engage in this lavish spending either without consequences. That's when I think it's a good way to enter into that argument.
Right? Isn't it interesting how we're taught and encouraged to be wise stewards of our earnings, and so we have so much financial literacy, so many courses, commercials, classes, financial experts telling you how to take care of our personal money, budget, and things like that nature. But yet those things don't apply to the government, as you just mentioned. Like the idea of living within your means or expanding your means somehow to where you can expand your livelihood, and just we're encouraged to be good stewards, where it's not applied to our government, and that's unfortunate because people don't know that our government is in a negative and living on a credit card that we're expected to pay back through taxation, as you hinted at earlier. So, yeah, it's interesting. Now, I want to touch base, because we're in the whole realm of talking about government spending and whatnot, and I'm sure you guys, covered as well in the whole UBI, Universal Basic Income, and so I've actually changed it from UBI to UBA. So basically, that stands for Universal Basic Allowance. And so, what are your thoughts on you receiving an allowance from the government? Are you excited about that? Anybody?
I'll take that one. So, I've had the chance of having a guy on my program who's from Scotland, and his name is Anthony Samaroff. He's a great guy, smart guy, very free market thinker, and he's witnessing firsthand in Scotland what a UBI really means, because I think Scotland's one of the first countries to roll out the UBI. And what do people do? Do you think they take their UBI and they buy some Bitcoin and some gold and maybe pay off their auto loan? No, they end up getting that and heading right down to the pub. And so the bartenders are excited about this, but what we're going to discover is that it's not going to work. And the reason it won't work is because there's nothing worse. And I'm going to show my bias here a little bit. But John and I are guys, and 99% of our audience are guys. There's nothing worse for a guy than to be unoccupied in the middle of the day. The devil's hand, what is it, the old expression, right? Idle hands on the devil's playground. You really need to be doing something constructive. Adam Carolla jokes that when he was a construction worker, some of the happiest guys he knew were guys on the job site, because at the end of the day, they had something to be proud of. And when you give someone a UBI, what they ultimately do is they want more UBI. And they're not happy with what they got, and they feel gypped if they found out somebody else got more. So this is a terrible thing, especially for the human soul, which is why I'm personally opposed to it.
Yeah, I think just that it's an interesting idea, but I would just wonder, oh, well, at the end of the year, I guess I'll just have to pay back a bunch of this UBI to the government, because I'm getting taxed. I would think you're getting taxed for it, so I don't know how it would work.
They have I read one report that I did a video on where they're talking about doing it through just basically giving a tax credit of some kind, where I don't read the details of it, but basically they're trying to propose ways of spinning off to where it sounds like it's going to be something they can actually pull off. And I want to say that was out west, up in Seattle or Washington, California, primarily in the states that's already in big trouble. Like, for example, there's a county, I believe, or city in California that's talking about giving $500 or something like that, and they've already filed or went through a bankruptcy as a government or as a municipality there. So not sure how they're going to pull that off, but so I think one of my thoughts is that once this whole recession kicks in and there's a market downturn, as a part of the response, they're going to have to inject something into the system, QE4, but it's going to be UBAs, and so we'll all get some type of allowance, and then they'll, let's talk about possible scenarios. Just we don't know, but let's talk about what could be when the things that when the truth sets in that this is all an illusion and the bubble pops. What are some of the response methods? I believe the UBA is coming, and then what else? What do you guys think?
It would be an interesting discussion, because you always hear, we just got through this whole tax debate battle, and that was all about, give more people's money back or whatever, or reduce their taxes. Well, this is like, you would give. You not only reduce their taxes, but just give them a full-on cash payment, and that'd be that's like, okay, well, that's another way to go about just cutting their taxes, I guess. But it's an interesting issue. I think there might be other ways that they go about saying, we gotta address the coming financial onslaught. One of those I've heard of that's a good one is this cashless society, where they make you pay to be able to keep your money in the bank. Instead of earning interest, you're paying interest. So it's the reverse, the negative interest rate idea. So that's another one.
Phil, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, unfortunately, John knows me. I'm very cynical when it comes to our government. I feel like they make the wrong decision 9 times out of 10. So when you extrapolate that to its logical conclusion, ultimately, all governments end up like Venezuela, really. Politicians promise something for nothing. They do exactly what you're not supposed to do in sales, which is they overpromise and underdeliver. And when our grandkids are finally dealing with this, or however much longer we have, they're going to discover that there's nothing there. The coffers are empty. So unfortunately, I'm awfully pessimistic, but that's why we're doing Kennedy Financial. John and I kind of joke we're the Paul Revere of personal finance. We're out saying, hey, a depression is coming. Inflation is coming. You need to get ready. You cannot trust these people. They are not being honest. And a politician is hardly ever honest because they want to keep their job. Look what happens to an honest politician. And we're not, we're apolitical, or we try to be apolitical on our show. But, both sides of the aisle have problems. And we're not saying that either party has the answer. But what we're saying is too many of these guys, their job depends on them not telling the truth and being dishonest. So when you already think that way, then you pretty much can be rest assured that things aren't going to work out right.
Right. Now, so the idea that we all know there's problems and it's going to be very unpleasant for a lot of people. But one thing that's really near and dear to my heart, not only, this is the Venezuela situation, but yet here in our own country, with the realization that what was promised years and years ago, that if you, spend 30, 40 years of giving us your very best, we will take care of you for the rest of your life. People will soon realize that motto was intended just to get a certain amount of politicians through their term back in the 30s and 40s. And so the whole idea of making these promises that will come to the light real soon, and there's going to be a lot of people waking up to the realization that there's nothing there. So there's pension, being underfunded in every state for the most part. Give me your thoughts on how and how and what might be the first catalyst? Will it be Illinois or Kentucky or California? And then, can states file bankruptcy? What will be some of the procedures that follow as people realize that they're not getting what they thought they would get?
Yeah, I think people are going to be very angry when, they were promised a certain thing, and certainly there's not going to be Social Security available, and Medicaid or Medicare. They're not going to be funded. So the situation in Puerto Rico, I thought, was a good example of what is to come. And maybe you could put a Band-Aid on that, and Trump can look like the good guy and help out with that with the aid package for the hurricane. But that's just one example. And once it begins to be more states, as you mentioned, then it's going to be a bloody affair, and people are going to lose their jobs, and they're not going to be, police aren't going to want to come to out into the streets to keep the peace. So it'll be a tough situation.
Yeah. Phil, you got any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think people intuitively know there's problems out there. The reason Rethinking the Dollar is doing so well, the reason you have thousands of subscribers, is because people are searching for answers, and they're not finding it on the mainstream business media. They know there are serious problems. They're dealing with it in their own family. They're feeling it, and they talk to their friends and neighbors, and they're feeling it too. So they realize, hey, you know what? So-and-so might be doing well out there, but most people are not. So they're looking for answers, and luckily they found your channel, because there are answers. You're going to have to take some personal responsibility, probably more than ever before. You're not going to be that lucky guy who worked for Ford back in the 40s and then was able to go out and retire with dignity, play golf and have a good time. Unfortunately, you're going to have to take responsibility more than your forefathers, and it's going to be hard. But with great problems comes great opportunities, and I think there's a great opportunity out there for this wealth transfer that is going to take place. And I don't think it's going to be like 20 years from now. I think that it's probably going to happen within Donald Trump's 4 years, and maybe by the end of the decade. So this can's been kicked a long time, and that doesn't mean that it's going to be everything we think it could be, but in terms of really recognizing that some of these problems are really starting to rear their ugly heads, I think it's sooner rather than later.
Right, I would agree. And one thing that has popped his head up above surface that has presented an opportunity for the younger generation, the millennials, Generation X, and some baby boomers, but the pensions were promised to our grandparents for the most part, and some of them are living very comfortably now to this day. My mom and my dad, they're entering that retirement phase, and they're going to be probably victims of this. So I've been doing my best to try to tell them, and they're aware. They know, they follow, they take an alternative approach. So I'm very glad that I've been able to help them. But yet for our generation, those that are 40 something and below, we have the opportunity of having a proactive way of getting involved and speculating with this crypto stuff. And so the idea that a lot of Generation X, a lot of millennials can actually look into what I kind of labeled a crypto allocation retirement plan, or a CARP, where we can speculate a little bit with, we can speculate with crumbs, but have the option or the opportunity to probably get ahead a little bit better off, that allow some of us to be able to, experience some form of retirement. Hopefully if things do get to the point of, having an increased market cap overall. But do you think that this CARP or, crypto allocation retirement plan type of thing is something that will be beneficial for our generation, to where we can utilize this as some form of not retirement, but a get through the crisis type plan? Anybody want to chime on that one?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways. There's a lot of creative ways that could be addressed. This whole issue of the crypto currency sector, I think it could be addressed, and people always have new ideas. There's always going to be different ways to tackle it. And I think that would be a great, way, instead of, ideally, instead of having to put all of your eggs in a 401k and get your nice market return and hope for the best, and gamble on the market. You could put it in something you actually believe in, and put it into, a set of different cryptos maybe that you might have more confidence in for the long term.
Yeah. Phil, anything?
Yeah, I think I'm going to use it again. This Blockbuster video Netflix analogy is one of the best ones out there, because there's a story that the guy who was starting Netflix went to the Blockbuster CEO and described what he was doing. They laughed at him, right? Like, just like Jamie Dimon laughs at anyone that owns Bitcoin. And I think what the financial services industry intuitively understands is that cryptocurrencies are going to be the most disruptive thing to their industry that they have ever witnessed. And I get a lot of flack. I'm sure you have trolls on your social media, Mike. I know I do. They're coming at me all the time. And I get a lot of people who work for Merrill Lynch and Edward Jones. And I think deep down, they know that this could potentially put them out of business. They are the buggy whip manufacturers of our time. If a young person holds their private keys on a hardware wallet, why do I need a 401k plan and an IRA and a 529 and a Social Security account? This is all going to be obsolete. Yeah. And these are all creations of government. You know, Harry Brown said the government breaks your leg, hands you a crutch, and says, hey, look, without me, you wouldn't be able to walk. And these are all, in my opinion, you know, I took the CFP exam and I didn't pass. But the thing that the best form of knowledge I gained is that Social Security is indeed a Ponzi scheme. And there are a lot of experts out there making lots of money off of this industry because they understand the regulatory environment and you don't. But I didn't like, Mike, I know you're kind of close to my age. I didn't like driving down to Blockbuster. I didn't like paying rewind fees. I didn't like paying late fees. I didn't like VHS tapes. And then Netflix came along. I could get my DVDs at home. I could watch movies online, and it was a heck of a lot better. And that's why we don't have Blockbuster Video anymore, and that's why we're not going to have all of these financial services companies down the road. It's going to be highly disruptive.
So, Jim, we have another caller. Caller, what's your name and where you calling from?
My name is Bonnie McDaniels. I'm from Lexington, Kentucky.
Bonnie McDaniels from Lexington, Kentucky. Thanks for calling.
I like your show. I like what you're doing. I hear you guys stating the problems, but do you guys have any solutions? I know I talk with my wife about the same things that you're talking about all the time. I'm retired Navy. I'm lucky that I have a pension, and I own real estate, and I'm actually looking into going to the franchises. So that's hopefully going to be my retirement. But do you have advice or any kind of solution for the rest of the people that, you know, maybe listen to this show or are worried, and also for people in general that aren't really paying attention to this?
Good question. Very good question. Phil, John, anybody want to chime in on that one?
Yeah, I think a great, you know, it is tempting to want to be one of these people that just is a negative Nancy, you know, and just says all the things that doom and gloom. But it is it's absolutely so important to be saving, to be getting your financial house in order, and yeah, to be also have an entrepreneurial spirit and think about the ways in which you'll be able to make an income, create an income stream here or there. And I like the idea of getting into some reasonable, you know, small time real estate, residential, you know, maybe creating some rental income that way, as opposed to these, you know, because all too often, all I see in the DC area is huge companies coming in and creating massive buildings that may or may not be full. But I like the idea of smaller, you know, townhome, you know, rental income. But yeah, the having some imagination about what's coming down the road and creating some opportunities for yourself, I think that would be a great path to go down.
Phil, want to chime in?
You have
I like that. In terms of what is the first step, what would I do if suddenly I was watching Rethinking the Dollar for the first time? The first thing I would do if I were married is get with my spouse and sit down and get out a sheet of paper and a pencil and write down what are we spending every month and what do we make, and hopefully there's something left over, and what are all our debts and how long would it take to pay off all those debts. That's the very first thing I would do. Without really having a financial plan, you are just spinning your wheels. And I think what a lot of people discover out there is they're spending more than they make, and they have more debts than they thought. So that'd be the first thing. But if you're already watching Rethinking the Dollar, then you're a bright guy. You recognize the problems. Become an evangelist. You know, talk to friends, family, fellow parishioners and say, hey, look, you know, there's serious problems out there, and I saw this show or this YouTube video. Why don't you watch this? You know, this is a little 5-minute clip I saw about student loans and how just destructive they are. Become that financial evangelist and help others really understand what's going on. And then third, and finally, which it sounds like you're already doing, you know, find something you're passionate about, a way that you can serve your community, but also be an entrepreneur at the same time. And probably just do it as a sole proprietor, because it's really just become such a headache to hire anyone, unfortunately.
Right. And then I'll chime in on that as well. I look at it, there's, you know, two approaches that are practical and unpractical. Practical meaning just doing what you're already aware of what to do. And for example, for me, we did the Dave Ramsey thing a long time ago, but for me, that kind of came to an end once I, you know, became aware of this whole monetary confusion we're living in. And so that his steps still work as a beginning, but then from that point on, I became more entrepreneurial. And then Robert Kiyosaki and the Rich Dad concept became something that really excited me. So I blended those two together in a practical sense of getting out of debt as best you can, and then diversifying with your, you know, current holdings of what you have cash wise into things that retain value. And then on the unpractical side, your spirituality. You know, for me, what keeps me from being a doom and gloom type of guy is the fact that I read the Bible constantly. I know that God already has everything worked out, so I don't really worry in regards to how things will really unfold. And then also, I have just a knack for creativity. So entrepreneurship has been my passion forever. So I consider myself a servant. So I try to serve. So right now, having these gentlemen on here, we're serving the world. And so we're trying to give education, give information that in and of itself offers value. So by serving, you're going to add value. And that right there will always be needed in some form or fashion. Now, I believe if you do those two things or those steps there, you're going to come up on a good end, because people will need you for something. And then you're going to always be in demand for something. So that's just my thought. You have another question or comment on that one?
I did want to add, it's not really to brag. I already have real estate. Okay. And for your listeners, in the state of Ohio, you can buy a house for as little as $30,000 to $40,000 with a tenant paying $650. I already have real estate, and we're looking into getting the franchises. Okay. What I was asking you three is, what is your advice for everyone else that may not have some kind of backup plan? They may be unemployed. Their job likely doesn't offer a pension. That's what I was asking. And for the most part, you guys pretty much answered it. You're saying entrepreneurship, saving your money. And like I said, I was fortunate enough that I joined the U.S. Navy and I got medically discharged, and I already have a pension for life. I thank God for that. But yeah, I just wanted to hear y'all's take on what do you think will be a solution to, you know, Kentucky's pension prices, California, because I actually am in Kentucky and I know exactly what you're talking about. I live in Lexington, Kentucky, and they are having that pension crisis. So what do you guys think would be a broader plan for the United States? What do you guys suggest?
Gentlemen, anybody want to take that one?
John, you should take that one. You're the Kentucky and real estate guy.
Yeah, right. So well, incidentally, yeah, I'm getting married in Lexington later this year, so I'll be able to see firsthand the. No, it's a lovely place, but I think there is I believe Robert Kiyosaki did have a statement to make about living near a government, owned area, and how if you pick and choose real estate to purchase around there, and then say, okay, well, the government spends money and it's going to have more and more government employees living nearby, then you would be in a good position to be able to rent space to them. And if you own commercial real estate, for instance, or something like that. So that would be an example I would point to. I'm not totally educated on the different pension systems in different states, but certainly from a practical standpoint, I like places that are somewhat off the beaten path, just in terms of population. Personally, I think that being a little bit further away from, say, LA and New York and places like this, where people are really living day to day, and if there was ever a calamity, then they would be in trouble. I think that would be of concern to me.
Gentlemen, I believe I have another caller.
Great.
Caller, are you there? Hello? So I hear them listening to us, but if you're there, please call back. So that is a very great, that was a great question, man. That's the thing. Like, one thing I find in this sector is the fact that we all know the problems, but it's the practical solutions that people can do on a daily basis. And I believe, Phil, you hit it on the nail about being a voice, finding your voice in this whole sector, being that everyone has an opinion. And so the whole idea of Rethink the Dollar, RTD, a voice for the people. Everyone has a voice to share. And all it takes is just one person get excited about something and share that with somebody else. And then it becomes a domino effect. So, I really, appreciate you guys chiming in. So we've been about an hour now. Great conversation. Don't want it to end, but as always, we can't be on here all night, even though I think people probably would watch us for quite a while. I've had several people mention about staying on there all night. Yeah. But my as we draw down the home stretch, want to just kind of hit at some of the things that's happening right now. We got a State of the Union address. Donald Trump is about to give that. I'm not sure. I think it's pretty soon, if not whatever. So what are your thoughts on, will he deliver any bombshells? Will it be just your normal, typical, look at the teleprompters, go back and forth, speak to the American people, tell them what they want to hear? Or will he tell us something we don't want to hear, but we need to hear?
Well, I think one of the things that I find interesting is that I was unaware that members of Congress were not required to attend. And this is the first time I've been informed that people are already announcing that they intend to skip it. We all remember that congressman who shouted out at President Obama in the middle of his State of the Union. He called him a liar. And I thought, gosh, it probably would have been better off if he had stayed home that night, right? And he had issued an apology the next day, because that was an entirely inappropriate thing to do, regardless of whatever one's feelings are on a particular topic. But now we're finding out that people are going to skip it and they're announcing it. So my greater concern is that we're kind of discovering just how divided we are as a nation. And a house that's divided will not stand, right? So that's really my greatest fear, regardless of what the president says during his State of the Union. We've outlined all the problems over the last hour. You can't ignore the fact, and I think you were trying to take a call when I was trying to say that, a family of four has a debt liability, a national debt liability of about $250,000. But we all know that 60% of Americans don't have $1,000 saved. And more than 50% of Americans who are retirement age don't have more than $10,000 saved. So we are already broke as a country. Right. And then you see all the infighting that's taking place. So I'm very concerned. That's why we're doing Kennedy Financial. That's why I'm glad you're doing Rethinking the Dollar. I think we need to come together as local communities, as John was saying. One of these guys we follow is James Wesley Rawls, who says, look, whether times are good or bad, have a local community of folks that that can help you. You all have your own expertise, and always be building that. And maybe that's the best advice I could have had for that caller who had served in the Navy, is that's what you can be doing right now in Lexington, Kentucky, is building your own local community and finding those experts. And so when the time finally does come, you have everything in place.
I do agree. So, gentlemen, as we draw towards the end of our conversation, I appreciate you guys sitting down with us. Is there any one particular, say, book or course or class that has impacted your life that you would say, hey, I would recommend you guys go to your library, go to Amazon, whatever, grab this, just thumb through it. It'll give you something. It'll be that first step you need if someone just coming across the whole idea of, awakening to our monetary confusing world we're in now. Any books or anything that would come to mind that you would want to offer as a advice to somebody or a suggestion?
Yeah, so I not a book, but a podcast called Contra Krugman. It's really just this podcast where an economist named Bob Murphy and Tom Woods go through the Paul Krugman op-ed every week, and they tear it to shreds. And he's a big Keynesian, and he talks about how we need to spend more money. So they really rip that idea to shreds, and it's pretty accessible and pretty easy to digest.
Very good one. And just want to call to Alan, a viewer said, Bill Steele's The Secret of Oz. That is a very good one. So thanks, Alan, for chiming in on that one. Phil, any book or any recommendations there would be a simple step for somebody to begin educating themselves?
I would say if someone is hearing this message for the first time, they should check out some of Mike Maloney's work. He has a series called The Hidden Secrets of Money. And I think it was episode 4 that is entitled The Biggest Scam in the History of Mankind. That was extremely well done and has millions of views as a result. If you don't believe some of the things we're talking about, go and check that out. It's very visual, and I think it kind of helps you understand just what a Ponzi scheme our government is and how they fund their operations through the inflation tax and taxes and just all that mess. But if you are on board, I would be remiss without saying you could check out my free ebook, Financial Judo, that came out almost 2 years ago now. A lot of it's still applicable today. You know, just the basic stuff, how to budget, pay your taxes, get out of debt, and save for the future. One of the things I did not talk about in that book was cryptocurrencies because I didn't quite understand them. And I've really spent, after I finished writing the book, that's what I spent most of my time on, is getting my arms around crypto. So for that, I would look for Andreas Antonopoulos.
Phil, you like right when you were saying the key part of that last statement, it broke up on my end, so I imagine mine broke up on the net. So can you share that last little line about that last thought you're sharing? Okay, so I didn't write about cryptocurrencies and financial judo because I didn't quite understand them. So I spent the last 2 years really trying to get my arms around them. And one of the things that helped me out the most was Joe Rogan's podcast. Andreas Antonopoulos appeared on there about 2 or 3 times. And he's a really bright guy, probably one of the brightest financial minds out there. And he'll walk you through step by step why Bitcoin is just so evolutionary. So check that out. Right. And so we have a couple people, you know, it's good to have great audience support. We have a couple people chiming in with different books. So we got The Creature from Jekyll Island. We got Jeff Burrick, the Vigilante, Dollar Vigilante. And then we have Max Kaiser for some people. So a lot of people out there that's trying to educate people. So it's always good to have people that share like interests that want to help people make a difference in this world. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Can you give the audience some times or whatnot? Give us the breakdown of when you guys do your show and when we can tune in and how we can go and get involved with what you guys got going on.
Yeah, so John and I do a weekly podcast. Unfortunately, because of our day jobs and family responsibilities, that's really all we have time for. But we do it every Thursday. Usually comes out by Friday morning. And with the video of that podcast comes out on Sunday afternoon. So you can find that at our website, philip1lkennedy.com. That's where you can also download the book for free. And we're on Twitter and Facebook at Kennedy Finance. And you can easily find our YouTube channel through either of those avenues.
Right, and I'll link all that below as well so people can get directly connected with you. So, gentlemen, once again, thank you for joining me on RTD Live Talk. It was great having people call in and a lot of activity in the chat part. So definitely enjoy conversating with you guys and look forward to having you guys back on again so we can talk some more as we get further into the year, as more things unfold and we find out what this crypto market and the weakening dollar that we didn't really get a chance to cover, how that all plays out. Isn't it amazing that our president and our secretary of treasury want a weak dollar?
Unusual times. Strange times.
Very much so. Very much so. But gentlemen, thank you once again. Look forward to staying in contact with you guys and following your work over at Kennedy Financial. And good luck with everything. And God bless you guys. And keep doing what you're doing. Appreciate you.
Yep. Same to you, Mike. Thank you.